Hi everyone, thanks for coming back. I wanted to continue going over Mark 11 and finish explaining the imagery that I believe is being presented in this chapter and how I believe it's representing the imagery of DNA and how I believe that's actually the theme of the entire Bible. I wanted to talk a little bit more about that, but there's some more information that I've come across recently, and this actually came through a Bible code that I just on a whim tried to pull up yesterday. And I want to share that Bible code with you too. But it led to some information that I believe ties in to what I've been talking about, as you can see from this image right here. And I believe it's more evidence for the Passover, for these events taking place during the Passover that are represented in Mark 11, and I want to get into that next, but I want to finish going over this first, and then I'll explain this image over here, and I'll show you the Bible code that I came up with. And there's also another Bible code that I came up with that also seems to be pointing to the Passover, and I want to share those two Bible codes next, but first I want to continue with Mark 11 and try to finish explaining that. And in my last video, I was at this point right here where it was talking about how Jesus overthrew the tables of the money changers in the temple, and I was talking about this word overthrew, which in the Greek is the word katastrophal, which is the word that we get catastrophe from, and it actually means to turn over, and it comes from this word right here as the base word, which means to turn around, or basically to turn upside down, or to twist, to turn back again. And I was explaining how it was comparable to this word right here in the Hebrew, which is Strong's 2017. And this word basically means to turn things upside down. And it comes up in only one scripture. This particular Strong's number comes up in this one scripture. And this happens to be the scripture that Jonathan Kleck quotes all the time. And it's Isaiah 29:16, where it says, "Surely your turning of things upside down shall be esteemed as the potter's clay. For shall the work say of him that made it, he made me not? Or shall the thing framed say of him that framed it, he had no understanding?" And this is basically just one form of this word, but it actually goes all the way back to about Strong's 2014. As you can see here, if you go to, well, actually this is Strong's 2014. This is a different word, so it goes back to 2015, which will be the next Strong's word. So you can see that means to turn, overthrow is Strong's 2015, and it goes through to 2017. You can see it's the same word for 2016. It means about the same thing. And then 2017 we just did. And then 2018, I believe, is also a form of the same word. And then 2019 is also another related word. And then 2020 means deliverance or escape. And 2021 means chariot. And I just wanted to bring that up because over here in my table on mitosis, it started with Ezekiel 2013 going through to about 2021, and it made a symmetrical pattern with 2017 being right in the middle. And so we have the Strong's numbers starting from about 2015 and going through to about 2020 or 2021, with 2021 meaning chariot, which can be also likened to a DNA strand. I could probably explain that later, but before that you had deliverance and escape. So I'm not sure if these years parallel the 70th week or not, but it's interesting that 2017 comes up right in the middle. And then I had done a table on the word theophany and Jesus, which this word means appearance. In the Greek, it's a form of the word epiphany or epiphania in the Greek, and it means the appearance of God. This word means God. So I had put the appearance of God in Jesus, and it came up with Matthew 20:12 through Matthew 20:17. And then you have this symmetrical pattern here with the blood moons, being in the middle between the years 2014 through 2015. And this pattern starts from about 2010 and goes to about 2019. So you have a symmetrical pattern right there. And this date right here in the middle is January 5th, 2015. And this day is just before the date of the Epiphany, which is on January 6th every year. And so you have the blood moons on a Hebrew feast, on Passover and Sukkot, and then Passover and Sukkot, and then right in the middle you have a Gentile feast, which is the Epiphany, which means the Lord's appearance. So I believe that's what this blood moon pattern is pointing to. I believe it's pointing to the Epiphany or the Lord's appearance. And so the point that I want to make is that I believe the midst is very important. And incidentally, the middle verse of the entire Bible just happens to be Psalm 117. That's actually the middle chapter, is 117. And it's saying over here that the middle verse is Psalms 103, 1 through 2. But it's generally believed that the middle verse is Psalm 118:8, which says to trust God and not man. That's generally what's believed to be the middle verse of the Bible. And so there's a little bit of controversy as to whether Psalm 117 or Psalm 118 is the middle chapter and what the middle verse is. But if you look for this word epiphania in the Greek, which means appearance, you can see there's a couple of different forms for it. But if you look at this one right here, you'll see that it actually comes up in Psalm 117 verse 27 as well as Psalm 118. And in fact, some of the verses that are in Psalm 118, for some reason in the Septuagint, they come up in Psalm 117, such as this one right here, where it says, Yahweh is God, He has given us light, bind the sacrifice with cords, even unto the horns of the altar. And I had talked about the horns of the altar when I did my Super Bowl table. It's basically the Ark of the Covenant is what it's talking about, and the atonement sacrifice. But it's interesting that in the Septuagint, this is coming up in verse 17, verse 27, and I've talked about the number 27, how I believe that represents the coming of Christ. It usually comes up in verse 27, where it talks about the Lord's appearance. And in the Septuagint, it comes up in Psalm 117, but this same verse comes up in Psalm 118 in the King James Bible. And you can see that right here in Psalm 118:27. It says, God is the Lord, which hath showed us light, bind the sacrifice with cords, even unto the horns of the altar. And this is one of the Hallel Psalms, which are the Psalms that are read during all of the feasts. So they were reading this Psalm on Passover when Jesus was being nailed to the cross. And the Hallel Psalms are a group of psalms that give praise to the Lord. They start out with Hallel and end with Hallel usually, and those would be Psalms 113 through 118, and they're read during every feast. And then after that you have the Psalms of Ascent, which would be Psalms 120 through 134. But over here it says they actually start with Psalm 119 in the Septuagint. So you have the Hallel Psalms going from Psalm 113 through to about Psalm 120, which matches pretty much with this mitosis table, with Psalm 17 being right in the middle and Psalm 117 being the middle chapter of the entire Bible. And this is according to Wikipedia over here. It's saying that Psalm 117 is the middle verse or the middle chapter of the Bible. And this is important because Jesus is always depicted as being in the middle. You see over here at the crucifixion, Jesus was crucified between two other people, and Jesus was in the middle. And in Revelation 1:13, you see Jesus standing in the midst of the seven candlesticks. And then there's also the tree of life, which was in the midst of the garden, but it's also in the book of Revelation. Well, you see it here in Revelation 2:7, which is like the number 27. It says, "He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. To him that overcometh, I will give to eat of the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of God." And then over here in Revelation 22:2, it says, "In the midst of the street of it, on either side of it, the river, there was the tree of life, which bare all manner of fruits, and yielded her fruit every month, and the leaves of the tree were the healing of the nations." And over here it says, "Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life, and may enter in through the gates into the city." So over here in these two verses it mentions the midst. And over here in Genesis, in the Garden of Eden, the tree of life was in the midst of the garden. So the midst is very important. And then also there's Daniel's 70th week, which talks about the midst. It's in the midst of the week when everything happens. The midst of the week is actually the climax, and that's the next thing that I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about Jacob's ladder, and I just wanted to thank Reject the Mark of the Beast for sending me this PDF file. I'll put the link in the description box, but there's some very interesting information here about DNA and how it relates to the Bible. But getting back to the tree of life, I think this image is very interesting. I think it's interesting how it resembles a DNA strand, and I had actually recently done a table on the tree of life because I was speculating that it had to do with DNA, that it was actually the image of a DNA strand. And as you can see, this table seems to confirm that. I had put in the terms tree, life, river, DNA strand, seed, and egg, and all those terms came up in Genesis 2, where it talks about the tree of life, but they came up in ELS form. Only the word river is in the plain text. But I'm about out of time, so I'll have to continue in the next video. Thanks.